Look alive. This is episode 5. What's going on, survivors? This is Greenhand here again for another episode of how to stay alive in a survival scenario / apocalypse. Today we're going to be focusing on more safety and maintenance, specifically gun safety and cleaning, and also knife safety and sharpening. This is very important when you are out wherever you're at. You want your knife to be sharp. You do not want your weapon to fail. That will put you in a very bad, very scary situation. So we will be learning how to keep our weapon clean and free of debris, and we will be learning how to keep a sharp ass edge on our knife, so all of our equipment is going to be ready to use when we need to use it. Okay, today we will start with the gun. So I'm gonna move this stuff out of the way real quick. Gun safety has become a very big issue in the country. It has become a very almost taboo subject with a lot of people. So here, right now, we're going to be going over the safety features and letting people know how to stay safe, and that these guns, these weapons, aren't as evil as they appear. Now, this is a 9mm semi-automatic weapon. This is mine. I purchased it. I have the receipt for it. I got the box for it. I got everything you need for it. So this is mine. This is legal. It was purchased at a gun shop. So with that information, we got everything, I guess, legally covered, whatever, to make anybody feel better about anything. We are not doing anything illegal. So let's get started. Okay. First thing I want to go over is this type of semi-automatic pistol does have safety precautions. Okay. First off, first line of defense is it has an exterior safety right here. That's this thing. When this is flipped up, you cannot pull the trigger. When it's flipped down and there's a little red dot right there, it's ready to fire. Okay? Red on a gun means shoot. Red on a gun means shoot. Okay, moving forward. Whenever somebody hands you a weapon, the first thing you want to do, regardless of situation, is clear that weapon. What that means is you want to clear the magazine, you want to clear the barrel, and you want to clear the chamber. You want to make sure that there's nothing in there. So what you do, you expel the magazine, take the magazine out, take the weapon off safe, and you cock the mechanism back to clear the chamber. See? Bullet fell out. Now, I feel like my weapon is clear. The magazine is out. I cocked it back and cleared the chamber. Now, if the magazine would be in, when it closed, it would load another bullet. That's why you take the magazine out first. Take the magazine out, cock it back, and clear the chamber. And most times what they'll have you do is they'll have you push up on a lever to keep the slide back, so everyone can see that the weapon is clear. After you get past that point, your weapon is clear, you pull the trigger. Away from you and everyone else. Hear that? My trigger mechanism works exactly the way it's supposed to, and my weapon is clear. Now that our weapon is clear, we may move on to the next step. So, now, oh, that's some good shit. So, now that our weapon is clear and safe for handling, we can start to disassemble our weapon. Now, I'm going to do this because not every weapon disassembly is the same, so I'm just going to do this real quick. slide is off. I have not disassembled the slide yet. There's still more pieces to take apart on this. On this particular 9mm and on most semi-automatic pistols that are built like this have a solid bottom piece that has your trigger guard, your trigger mechanism, and the hammer all in one assembly. Now this is good for efficiency, and it is not that bad for cleaning as well, because you want to get in there and clean all that out, because every time you fire a weapon, the gunpowder covers everything on the inside of the weapon, as well as most things on the outside of the weapon, including your hands. Anybody that's watched a crime show knows about gunshot residue. Well, that powder gets everywhere, and that is the reason that you take this apart, is to clean that powder and residue off of your weapon so it continues to fire cleanly and safely without any type of jams or back explosions. Yes, it's possible. If your weapon is not clean and you do not take care of it, and you put maybe a faulty round in there and you pull the trigger, that gun could explode in your face. So that is why we make sure our weapons are always clean. Now that we have the bottom assembly and we have the slide, we're going to take the slide apart. So what you do is you uncock the spring and you take that out, the drive rod and the spring together, and then you will be able to slide your barrel out. So now we have separate pieces of our weapon. We have our spring, our drive rod, we have our barrel and our slide, and we have our bottom assembly. These are the main parts that we're going to focus on, particularly because you really can't take this weapon apart more than that unless you know what you're doing. This is the basic disassembly of a weapon so that you may be able to clean it. There are several parts to cleaning a weapon, and all of them you should take with equal care, and you need to give a damn about every single part of this. If you slack off on one part, your weapon can jam, and that's going to cause a problem, especially if you are in the woods walking and something's charging at you, or you're in a situation and you need to use your weapon. You want to be able to use it. So where I'm going to start today is the slide. Now what we want to do is we want to take one of these brushes, and this is my gun cleaning kit. It's a Zombie Apocalypse gun cleaning kit. It's just a brand, it's just a face. There's nothing special about this gun cleaning kit that you can't find in other basic gun cleaning kits. I chose the zombie one because I'm a huge fan of the Zombie Apocalypse. Anybody that knows me knows that. So I have two different brushes. We have a hard bristle brush and we have a softer bristle brush. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this harder bristle brush first, and I'm going to scrub down the sides of the inside and the main part of the chamber, just to get any caked on, hard to get off residue or powder. This hard bristle brush will do a lot better at scrubbing it off. After you give that a nice scrub down, for each person it's different, each weapon it's different, because not each weapon looks the same. For me personally, I scrub mine down until I can start to see the coating of the metal. Now there's an outside coating to this metal, and when you can start to see that, that's a pretty good indication that your weapon is down, it's clean enough to where you can use a soft bristle brush and just kind of wipe all that stuff out of there. Now in some guns they use a type of metal that looks bronze almost under the black coating. So whenever you start to see that bronze, you know you're getting to a good spot. Okay, you want to clean all the parts of this, because as I said, that gunshot residue and that gunpowder gets everywhere. And one of the most important things when cleaning your weapon is diligence. This takes time. It takes patience, and it takes your effort. You can't slack on that, or your weapon and you will suffer. Okay. So once you feel comfortable that you got all that stuff off of there, that thick stuff, the gunshot residue, the gunpowder, you take yourself a paper towel, you just give it a quick wipe down on the inside. That just makes sure you get all the fine particles off of your weapon. Because later, when we lubricate this and we coat this, you do not want those particles to mix in with your lubrication. If they mix in with your lubrication, it'll cause clumps. And those clumps are very, very sticky, and it will and can cause your weapon to malfunction. So we just get all that powder off of there, give it a quick once over, and then we're ready to move on to the next part, which I'm going to do is the back of the chamber and the hole of the chamber. Whenever this gun cocks back and lets the round eject, this area gets a very big exposure of gunshot residue. So we're going to clean that off next. Then you give the entire outside of the, or the inside of the slide a good once over with the soft bristle brush, because that coats the outside of your barrel, and you want to make sure that all of that is smooth whenever it goes to fire. Now that we have all parts of our slide done, we can move on to the other parts. And I'm going to move on to the barrel next. Barrel is very important. The outside and the inside of your barrel needs to be as clean as you can possibly get it. So later on when we lubricate, this is one of the main parts of the weapon that we lubricate. So you might want to give this a quick once down with a paper towel before you get started. What I'm doing is getting GSR off the outside of the barrel. When we move to the inside of the barrel, we change a little bit, because most of the time this hard bristle brush that you use to scrub the outside of your weapon will not be the brush that you use to clean the inside of your weapon. All of these have markings on them that show you what caliber barrel they fit through. 9mm, 22, 40 caliber, 45, 50 caliber, 30-aught, and then you have shotgun gauges that you have to worry about. This does not have the long barrel or shotgun barrel cleaners in it. This is only a handgun cleaner. So now that I found the right size bristle brush, the 9mm, I put that on to this little stick, which is also included in the gun cleaning kit. And what you do is you run this through your barrel several times of the direction of travel. The same direction the bullet goes, that's the way you want to push your bristle brush through the barrel. It's very important. You don't want to go backwards. You don't want to cause any nicks to the grooves on the inside of your barrel that help your bullet spin. So you go one direction, pass all the way through, and you do that several times. Once you have that done, there's this nifty little guy here that you put cloth or paper towel piece through. Fold it up, make it small and skinny. Pass the end of that through the eye. Now you have a little butterfly. Take off the hard bristle brush. Put on your paper towel. And then what you do is you pass this through your barrel several times to allow the paper towel to get off all the residue and powder you just created by shoving that brush through the barrel. You want to get all of the gunpowder residue, as much as you can, off of your weapon. Cannot say that enough, because that's the most important thing. That is what is going to prevent your weapon from firing. Barrel done. So now that our slide and our barrel are done, we can reassemble that part, which is just sliding the barrel into the slide. And you want to do that because you don't want to lose your parts. You don't want to lose the pieces. That's why I have it sitting on a towel, so none of this stuff can roll off or go anywhere. You lose a piece to your weapon, you're screwed. So don't do that. Okay, now we're going to clean off the spring and the drive rod. And these just require a quick wipe down with a paper towel. There isn't much scrubbing you can do with these without messing them up, and you don't want to mess them up. So give them a really good wipe down with a paper towel. Use some pretty good force to try and get as much as you can off of it. After you wipe your spring down, give your drive rod a really good wipe down. Now these two parts don't get as exposed to gunshot residue. That's why you don't have to scrub them. Besides messing the spring up, just a really good wipe down on these guys will get you good. Okay. Alrighty. Now that we have our upper assembly clean, we're going to work on our lower assembly, which is where the most work is put into cleaning the weapon. This is definitely the part of the weapon that gets the most exposure to gunshot residue, so you want to give this a really, really good scrub with your bristle brush, and really good wipe downs with paper towels whenever you're done with your brush. You want to get your finger down in there and as uncomfortable as you can deal with to get as much of this powder off of this weapon as you can. Whenever you're doing this, you want to give it a wipe down with the hammer pulled back as well as the hammer forward, because the inside mechanisms of your weapon are in slightly different positions, and you want to clean that too. this part, after you give it a wipe down, after you rub it down, you just want to pull your hammer back and pull your trigger several times to make sure that everything is still functioning properly. Before you put the weapon back together, before anything else, you want to make sure that the functions of your weapon are working. Now that everything is wiped down, now that everything is clean, it is time for the most important part in reassembling your weapon. Whether it's shotgun, rifle, bazooka, grenade launcher, handgun, revolver, machine gun, whatever you're putting together, this is the most important part in reassembling your weapon. It is the coating, protecting, and lubrication of the inside mechanisms of your weapon. You want to pay the most attention to this part, and you want to pay the most detail and give the most effort into this part of reassembling your weapon. Lubrication and the right parts will keep your weapon always functioning. I've put 1,000 rounds through this weapon by itself, and it has never jammed. Not one time. Because I maintain its cleanliness and I make sure that it is lubricated properly. 1,000 rounds has not jammed one time. So let's get to lubricating. You don't need a lot. You want maybe a drop per part. Okay? So I'm going to put 1 drop on my drive rod, and I'm actually going to try and spread that 1 drop onto most of the springs, because this assembled is 1 part. So I'm going to use 1 drop and try and get all of this done. It is okay to set it on the towel. The towel is not going to absorb the oil off of the metal as much as you think it would. It is still going to be very lubricated by the time you put it together. As I said, and if you're worried about it, give it another wipe down. Use your fingers so you don't lose the lubrication on the paper towel, so it doesn't spread, so things don't happen. Okay? Use your fingers. That's what I use, and it works for me. Other people might tell you use a paper towel. If you feel more comfortable with that, use a paper towel. But for me, I'm using my fingers. Okay, so I can feel all of these parts are lubricated and ready to put back together. So that can be put back together. Now I'm going to take care of my barrel and my slide. Now that I have the upper assembly lubricated, I can put it back together. And that will stay right there while I do the lower assembly. Wash your hands before you take a hit. Now I can lubricate the lower assembly. Now remember, you want to do this with the hammer up and the hammer pulled back. On the lower assembly, you will use more than one drop of lubrication. But be advised, the more lubrication you use, and if you take your weapon out and fire it freshly lubricated, the more gunshot residue you're going to have stick to the inside of your weapon. Okay? So, use a liberal amount, but as you'll see me do, I'll give it a little wipe down with a paper towel, not cleaning the lubricant off, but just making sure that it's spread around evenly and it's not caked up anywhere. Like I said, just a quick little spread, not cleaning, with paper towel. Now that we're lubricated and cleaned, we can reassemble the slide onto the lower mechanism. Just line it up, slide your weapon back together, place the holding pin. Now, what I do after I'm done with this, I give it a few pullbacks to spread everything around evenly. To make sure that all that lubrication that is inside and outside of the slide and inside and outside of the lower assembly spreads around evenly. Where it needs to be whenever it's time to go fire. Now that our weapon is seen as functioning properly, dry firing, we place it on safe, and we are done cleaning our weapon. Now that we're done cleaning our weapon, I want to go over a few things gun safety wise to keep everyone safe. First off, the weapon is only as dangerous as the person's using it and the person's knowledge using it. So if you're not knowledgeable, you are very dangerous with a weapon. So I just want to take a few minutes and spread a little bit of knowledge, just in case anybody was wondering anything and they were afraid to ask. First things first, when you're handed a weapon, make sure it is on safe. If it is not on safe, make it safe. Place the weapon on safe, so you are not walking around with a possibly loaded weapon that is ready to fire. That is the most dangerous situation that can be existing. Do not walk around with your weapon not on safe. First off. Secondly, do not place your finger inside of the trigger guard, where the trigger is. Don't put your finger there. Do not place your finger here unless you are actively pulling the trigger. Where you place your finger is on the outside of the trigger guard, where you can feel the trigger guard. That's what you should be feeling, not the trigger. Okay? That also saves many people's lives. Do not place your finger on the trigger. This is called trigger discipline. Have your finger on the outside, touching the trigger guard. Not up on the slide, not up close and on the trigger guard. Right here. You see my finger fully extended out. There's no way that my finger can pull that trigger because it's not on it. Third rule. Do not point a weapon at anyone. Not in play, not in intimidation. Do not point a weapon at anyone or anything that you do not intend to shoot. Simple as that. It's pretty self-explanatory. You don't point a weapon at someone, you don't have the possibility of shooting them. If you're holding the weapon, if you're looking at a weapon, even if you're just holding it, make sure that the barrel and direction of travel is facing away from anyone. Most times, it is safest to look at a weapon with the barrel facing down, towards the ground, away from people's feet. Okay? You can look, you can admire, you can turn yourself to look at the weapon however you want to, and the weapon stays safe. Safety is most important when you're dealing with firearms, and it will always be most important when dealing with firearms. Place the weapon on safe. Make sure the weapon is on safe. Do not place your finger on the trigger unless you're ready to shoot. Do not point a weapon, loaded or unloaded, at anyone under any circumstance, unless you are defending yourself, taking a shot on an animal, to hunt. Those 3 rules can save so many lives, and if you teach even your kids this, even if you don't have one, even if you teach your kids this, it will create a level of comfort and security and safety within everyone involved in the situation. Gun safety is the most important thing, and I'll say it 1,000,000 times and 1,000,000 times over. Alright, now that our gun is safe for self-defense and zombie extermination, we are going to move on to sharpening our knives. This is a very simple but also technical and can be difficult task to do. So we're just going to go over it. And first things first, know which way the blade of your knife is pointing while it's sitting in its sheath. Okay, you don't want to pull it out and accidentally cut yourself because you think it's facing one way when it's facing the other way. And so just remember how you place your knife into your sheath, so that way when you pull it out, you can be safe. First things first, we have our sharpening stone. This one has 3 sides. It has a coarse side, a medium side, and a fine side. The coarse side you want to use for dull blades, dull, that you're pretty much making an edge on. This one, this is the most time-consuming part of knife sharpening. Luckily, we are just using, Shiva, which, I use all the time for most cutting things outside, and we need a sharpener since our last excursion. So let's get started. So I'm using the medium edge first, just because I want to get a nice even edge whenever I'm doing this. Once you sharpen your knife, you're going to have to maintain the edge on it. So you want to make sure that when you're doing it, and once you start and once you get going, you can feel the angle and where you're at, and if you're doing it in a smooth and proper direction. Some people go against the blade, some people go with the blade. I'm just going to show you how I do mine, and my knife stays sharp and ready to use. So the medium stone is pretty porous, so when you first pour water on or your knife sharpening lubricant, it will absorb a lot of the water because it is porous. So I'm going to start at the tip, and I'm going to work my way down towards the shaft. And I'm just going to keep it at an angle to where if this were a block of cheese, I would be slicing off a pretty thin slice of cheese. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to go into the stone at all. I'm just running my edge along with the stone. Okay, now while you're doing this, you're not just going to sharpen one side. So keep in mind, however many passes you take on this side, you'll want to take a pretty close amount of equal passes on the other side. So I'm just going to apply some more water. So this is not an activity that you will be able to cater really to your preference of being right-handed or left-handed. Your blade needs to be sharpened evenly, so you're going to have to learn like I did and take your time and really feel the edge of your blade going along the stone. Okay. And then you can feel it's starting to, get some shape to it. Obviously, don't press the knife down on your fingers, but if you run your fingers along it, you can start to feel sharpness to it, and you'll feel where you need to work on more. I need to work a little bit more down here, so I'm going to do that. Okay, so we got a pretty good edge going, so we're going to flip over to our fine stone, which is where you get the really sharpness from. When you touch it and it kind of goes into your skin a little bit, this is the stone where you get that. So this is probably the most detailed aspect of knife sharpening. Before I get started, add your water, and the same thing you did on the medium stone. I'm going to start at the top, work my way down. So, with custom, everyone usually uses paper, something like that, to test their blade sharpness. So, we're going to do the same thing. So, not applying much pressure. We got a pretty good edge on there. Let's give it another go. Apply a bit more pressure. So, as you can see, we're not tearing the paper, we are cutting the paper. And that's what you want to look for. You don't want to look for tears in the edge of the paper. You want to look for your knife to be cutting the paper. That's what they're doing. They're making sure that they're not tearing, they're cutting. Okay? So, we got a pretty good edge on there. This would be pretty decent for most applications. I'm going to spend a bit more time off camera doing this, but this is therapeutic for me. So, yeah, I like it. Hopefully, my little tutorial edit kind of helped you out. If you were struggling with this, you got to see maybe how someone else does it, and it gives you another way to try something. So good luck with your knife sharpening. I know mine's going pretty well. Okay, so now that we've sharpened our knife, we're going to go over a little bit of safety using a knife in a survival situation. I've watched quite a few survival shows where someone's cutting something, or someone's, hacking something with an axe or a machete, and they get themselves. They get their thumb, they get their hand, they get their leg, toe. There's a lot of injuries that happen. I'm not going to say that they were being careless. In a survival situation, you get tired, and when you get tired, you do get a little mindless when it comes to doing these things. So we're just going to go over a little bit of safety to try and remember in the back of your head, and practice to start a good habit now so you don't have a problem later. First thing is, most of the time when you're cutting something, you're going to be cutting away from yourself. Okay? You don't ever want to be cutting towards yourself, because look, obviously, right? Any part of cutting towards yourself is a bad situation. So hold your knife blade out whenever you're going to utilize it for cutting or survival scenarios, just so you're already naturally holding it to where you're cutting away from yourself. Okay? As I said, you can chop something, you can cut something, and it's not good. So cutting rope, cutting branches, cutting anything, cut away from yourself as much as you can, just so you can avoid the blade nicking yourself. A small cut can turn into a massive infection, gangrene, or a blood infection that can lead to losing a limb or your life. So you don't want something small to turn into something major. So just hold it blade out whenever you're going to utilize it in a survival situation. Secondly, when you're putting it into your sheath, your carrier, whatever you want to call it, watch what you're doing. Watch how you're putting it in, and make sure that it's going in. You don't want to be holding it or it be on your hip and you just shove it and you stab your finger, or you stab your hip, or you cut your leg. Once again, cut turns into something bad. And in those areas, around the hip and around thighs and stuff, you do have arteries and veins that you do not want to cut, or you could bleed out. So just watch what you're doing and pay attention to how your blade is going in. Okay? Secondly, whenever you're drawing your blade, whenever you're taking your blade out, don't force it out. Don't pull it out. Don't do it quick, especially if anyone is near you. You don't want to pull your blade out, okay, and cut somebody. Okay, you don't want to do that. Okay, cutting yourself is bad. Cutting someone else is worse, because then they're hurt and injured and in risk, and you're responsible for it. So just pull it out. Pay attention to what you're doing. Always have it close to you. Keep it, within your own bubble. Don't wave a knife around willy-nilly, okay? That's not safe. That's not smart. It's not fun. So that is pretty much the basics of knife safety. It is common sense, and it is just paying attention that you have something sharp in your hand. You have something that can injure you. So just be safe whenever you're using it and putting it away. That's knife safety. Alrighty, so now that our weapons are safe and ready for use and we know that they're going to work when we need them to, that brings us to the end of this episode. Um, I had a good time doing it. I hope you learned something. I hope if you felt insecure about something, you feel a little more comfortable with it at the end of this episode. I appreciate you for watching. I appreciate the like that you left. And go ahead and subscribe while you're at it. So, every time we get a new episode out, every time we do something new, you can be a part of it. Once again, I appreciate you coming in. This is Green Hand signing off.